waiting. Okay. Things are happening. Can you hear me? Things are happening. You can hear me. We love it. Is a Tish quiet? You can hear me though. Okay. Really quick, since apparently I forgot to put on the starting soon screen, we're just gonna pop over to there. Remind y'all, this book right here, the first book in my series, The Queen of Thieves, A New Throne, is available for purchase on Amazon.com. Check it out, friends. It's a good, great entrance to the series. Super stoked about the rest of the books that are coming out. This book right here, yeah, you can get it. It's gonna be great. It's dope. We love the book. We love the whole series. Don't forget to check it out. But today, we are not talking about my book. We're talking about Justice in a Bottle by Pete Fanning. And, oh, hey, Nugget, you moved up to the chair. Nugget has been passed out, like, on this chair here for a hot minute. It's been quite cute. Oh, he's so cute. But no. Today we're talking about Justice in the Bottle, and we've got quite a lot to say about it. Let's start out with just 5 things you need to know just to be able to know what the plot is, you know? 1, this young black girl named Nita. She has dreams of being like a world-class journalist, getting a Pulitzer. She's in middle school, by the way, that's important. But her most recent story about a sinkhole flops because I think it was actually the state fixing potholes in the parking lot, not sinkholes or in the park. And the school is built on a sinkhole. Oh God. But that flops and it just really hurts her confidence. Next, you have Earl Melvin. He is the neighborhood Boo Radley. And I will say this once, I will probably say it again a couple times. This book is desperately trying to Kill a Mockingbird. So when I say he's Boo Radley, he is Boo Radley. 3, Melvin, I believe it's Melvin, I don't think it's Melville, I think it's Melvin. Earl claims that he's actually innocent of the rape of a white woman that he was charged with, I think 50 years prior to the events of this book. And when Nita gets like her hands on a copy of this diary, he refers to them as memoirs that he tossed out, she starts to believe him. 4, he's really, really, like, over the course of the book, we realize he's really innocent, but frankly, from the beginning of the story, I knew he was innocent, and we'll get into it more, but that's not anything that has to do with the author. That I think is the author's misunderstanding of history, causing them to believe that it's really a toss-up, but it's not. But he's super innocent, and he and this white woman, Mary, fell in love. She got pregnant, and her family either was going to kill him or he was going to get put in jail. But nobody in this book seemed to be able to comprehend this idea. And what I mean by that is, we'll get into that in a second. And last thing, Nita's story blows up, but Earl, it seems as if Earl knew he was very sick and he was going to pass soon, and he wanted to tell all of his story to someone. He wanted to tell his story to someone. So he's passing, but he does get to meet his son on his deathbed. Oh God. Let's start with the good thing about the book, and the reason why I wouldn't dissuade someone from reading the book is because the relationship between Nita and Mr. Melvin is so precious. It's so heartwarming. There were times where I was like tearing up. But the actual plot the author's trying to go for asks me to suspend my disbelief in ways that I don't think they realized that they were asking me to suspend my disbelief. And it was just too much. And what I mean by that is it seems like nobody in this community, which is presumably supposed to be a black community, no one understands what racism is. Nobody understands what the civil rights movement was and why we needed it. So there were so many people who couldn't fathom the idea that this man was innocent and therefore just wasn't giving him a chance. But realistically, and especially, there's one thing that really shoots the author in the foot here. They give us an article that's supposed to be an article from the time of the trial, and it says that the victim ran into the courtroom begging the jury to have mercy on Earl. And my God, that would have been more than enough evidence to have any black person that ever heard of this man's case automatically know he didn't do anything wrong. Because it seems like none of these people are able to fathom the fact that black people were treated really shitty back in that times, back right around the civil rights movement. Right. And it's upsetting because you also have, because all of these adults, more than anything, it's hard for me to believe because even, and it's especially because Nita was in middle school when this happened, and that is far too old to have not understand. That's far too old for her to not understand racism. She's in middle school. That would have been something you've learned in class. And even before that, that's something you grow up being told about and taught about in the household, because the fact of the matter is most black parents would rather you learn about racism and understand what it is before you go out in the world and have to experience it and have to deal with that, because the fact of the matter is you're going to deal with it. We want you to be prepared. So the fact that you have Nita's mother, who is so desperately just furious that Nita would talk to this man, and furious that she would even consider the fact that this man is innocent just because he told her. But Nita's mother's mother would have been drinking out of colored water fountains. There's no reason why she wouldn't even entertain the idea that this man was innocent. And I know when I was in school, which this seems to be taking place in present day, they're talking about Instagram on here. So this seems to be taking place in current day. It was published this year. So when I was in school, we had lessons saying that if you were in any form of mixed relationship, oftentimes black person was either killed or jailed, and white person was either let off scot-free, or their family in some way abused them or killed the child, stuff like that. We learned this in school. Nita should not be in middle school not understanding these things. She should not be in middle school looking at a civil rights protest and thinking, what is that? Why is everyone so upset? She knows this. She should know this. And side note, something that also bothered me was the author, because she also goes to her teacher, and her teacher's response to the whole thing is also unbearably ridiculous. Her teacher is like, I don't know, Nita. This doesn't, you would have to bring some solid evidence to prove that this man was innocent. But again, realistically, in this time, yes, that is a thing that happened quite a bit. And the fact that the victim ran into the jury begging for him to be given mercy when they are deciding his punishment is more than enough evidence for, and the fact that this was a question for anyone is frustrating. But she goes to her teacher because she saw the protest and she's confused and she doesn't understand why people are protesting, and her teacher says the reason why people are having all these protests is because everyone is scared, and that is wrong. That is just flat out wrong. The reason why people are protesting, specifically like civil rights things, police brutality things, is not out of fear. The police officers you are protesting, the police officers that are being sent to control the protests are being armed like they're going into war. If you were scared, you wouldn't go there. They're frustrated because we can't live our day-to-day lives without having some sort of confrontation, because you're assuming there's got to be some problem with me. You're assuming that with me out of the picture, or with me detained, or with me being that person to help you get to your arrest quota, you're making things better, because that is an assumption that is being made with in terms of like police relations to black people. And there's frustration because I'm not given the same chance that a white person is. That it's frustration. It is an epicenter of frustration, and that's where these protests come from. It's not fear. And that alone was just such a gross misunderstanding of a lot of these situations that we're seeing today, whether or not I think this was published before the protests and such that have been going on recently. But again, it was published this year. There have been protests throughout the U.S. Ooh, you need to calm down. There have been protests throughout the U.S. for recently, basically since the 90s, since Rodney King. So, again, this just feels like a massive misunderstanding of why these protests are happening. And again, it seems like this author is kind of assuming nobody, because maybe they are starting to learn about civil rights. And I don't know what race the author is, but they're assuming that because they're starting to learn about civil rights, and because the world is starting to kind of open its eyes to the issues black people face, that black people never understood it either. We knew. So that was my major frustration with this thing, and that's why I find it so hard to really... I skimmed just so many parts of the book, because the only things that are really truly interesting are seeing Nita bond with him, because of just the misunderstanding of how actually available and how common this information is to be given out. But it's assuming the book is assuming that nobody here, everyone had to be taught, everyone we see in this book had to be taught what civil rights was. They had to be taught about what it was like in Jim Crow era. And it's frustrating, because this is at the point where I feel like the rest of the book is meaningless. The rest of the book is useless to me, because again, I cannot lend that much disbelief. I truly cannot. And then you go on, there was a part of this that was actually just cringe. It was very cringy. And that was because you have Nita and her friend, we'll get back to this friend later, Nina and this friend go off. They run off to the rich neighborhood to talk to they want to talk to the prosecutor that was on that case. He has passed, so they're talking to his son, and the son's basically just saying everyone there knew that he hadn't done it. This wasn't what the case was about. And you truly see the son saying, I think my dad knew that he had put away an innocent man. And he's describing the day and what he remembers from that day, and he says his dad comes home, and for the first time and only time in his life, he essentially just chugged a whiskey from the bottle. The book, I believe that's where the book's trying to get its title, Justice in a Bottle. I don't personally think that works. I would have thought Justice in a Bottle sounds to me like, had this prosecutor gone, downed a bottle of whiskey, and then told the truth, that would have been justice in a bottle to me. Here, it seems like the bottle is actually suppressing the justice, but whatever. This book's just got me heated. I'm sweating now. It's a whole issue. Back to this friend, though. So, we have this friend, Ernest, I believe is his name. We're calling him Ernest. He is a dumpster diver, and that's actually how Nita ends up getting the notebooks of Boo Radley, is her friend's dumpster diving. He finds the notebooks and he gives them to her. There's several storylines with this friend that are just not well developed and feel so awkward when they're thrown in and not truly resolved or in any way. Because it'll be like you have a thorough story. You have them actually talking about what the book is supposed to be about. And then out of nowhere, you just get a random paragraph throwing in Ernest's backstory about how his brother died. And that was the day he started dumpster diving. And then actual story, random paragraph about how Ernest's dad is not around anymore now that his brother's died. And it's not integrated into the story well, and you really get no through line with it. That information goes nowhere aside from just he's a dumpster diver. This is kind of why. No Nugget's about to break everything. But yeah, so they just throw the information about why he's a dumpster diver, but it's like the author wants you to know the backstory, but they're not actually telling you a story with Ernest. Ernest has no story, no side plot in the book, but they want you to know all this random information about him. So it just doesn't, it feels awkward, and it takes you away from the actual story that's going on. Because again, it doesn't tie into anything aside from the fact that he's a dumpster diver, which I didn't need an explanation about why he's a dumpster diver. That could just be something he does. Maybe it's something, because honestly, it's a thing. Dumpster diving, especially when you're young, if you grew up in a, like, not with a lot of money, that's something you can do. I remember when I was young, we dumpster dove for wood and stuff, and we would try and build really poorly made just furniture and stuff for some hideout we hid in some park. But it's a thing to dumpster dive for fun, but I didn't need an explanation about why he did that, and especially if you're going to give an explanation, do something with it. Don't just throw random exposition at me. The other thing that they did with Ernest was they had this whole side plot of people randomly calling Ernest Anita's boyfriend, and that made her awkward. And so one day she just kind of stopped talking. She didn't talk to him. She turned her back on and just wouldn't talk to him because her friend made her feel super awkward about it. And then he's vanished for a couple days. He doesn't show up to school or on the bus for a couple days. Comes back, nothing has happened. So I don't understand why that part of the story was in there. Granted, yes, I know as someone who has had mostly male friends, I know that's a thing. It's irritating that this is still a thing in books because it's just not an interesting plot line. This author didn't even do anything with that plot line. So again, you can throw in, especially with the amount of attention that was given to this, if you're going to do this, you're starting to build up a side plot. Do something with it. That was such a waste of my time at this point. This book got very upsetting at times. Another side plot that they did nothing with, no explanation to, was this voice in her head. She had a voice in her head. She called him Mr. Hack. And I think the biggest issue with this was because he seemed to be a voice in her head that she could not control. And the text with this would actually get quite confusing. Because there would be sometimes when she's speaking to Mr. Hack, actually most of the time when she's speaking to Mr. Hack, she's speaking out loud and everyone around her can hear her. And that's something that's constantly commented on, which makes me think, is there a mental thing we're going to deal with Nita? But then the one time she's talking to Mr. Hack around her mother, that it's written out, format of it is exactly the same as the rest of the book. Nugget's trying to be sneaky. But the format of it is exactly the same as it is the rest of the book, but apparently this time she's not talking out loud. So we get no actual attention with it from her mother. So at some point she just kind of tells Mr. Hack, go away. He goes away. So I guess that was, again, it seems like a little worrisome because it was something she seemed to struggle with controlling so much. An actual separate part of her in her mind she could not control, to the point where she would be just talking with this part of her out loud in scenarios in which she wouldn't want to be having a conversation with this character in her head. And yes, that is not necessarily an uncommon thing, but through and through, that is worrisome. That is something you should be tending to. This character's just like, nope, I don't want you here no more. It's like, okay. And it's over. So, yeah, that just happened. God, this book, it did some things. Again, I will say it again. I believe that the relationship between Nita and Mr. Melvin was very precious, was very sweet, heartwarming, teared up a little bit. But the main plot of the story, it just gets me. I can't buy into it at all. And then there are times, especially at the beginning of the book, because it took me a bit to actually get into reading the book, and I don't know if it got better throughout the book, but the writing of the book can get pretty rough. There were quite a few times where I would just skim it. So I wouldn't necessarily tell someone, hey, you have to read this book, if not for the plot, then read it for that relationship, because of the issues I do have with the writing overall. But it's also because of that relationship and because of how sweet that relationship is, I would just give a warning when you're going into it. But I'm not going to tell you, hey, it's not worth your time, don't do it. I'm not going to say anything like that. But yeah, this book, it just got super frustrating. There were times where they would try and push this whole Nita's mother has no interest in her journalism stuff, but the ways they would try and connect that were just awkward. For instance, there was one situation where her mother said, "Since when do you sorta do anything?" Because Nita says, "I'm sort of doing this story, I guess," and her mother says, "Since when do you sorta do anything?" And the next line of text is, where Nita couldn't sit through one of her mother's TV shows, her mother would never understand her daughter's passion for journalism. That her mother saying, "Since when do you sorta do anything?" has nothing to do with a lack of interest in journalism. It's her saying, "What do you mean you're only kind of doing anything? You always go full force with everything you ever do." But this author wanted to try and push it as the issue with that relationship, and that is also something that we kind of address. That she reads the piece that Nita writes about, and her mother's super proud, but I don't know. I just kind of didn't necessarily feel that much for that relationship. Maybe as someone who also didn't really have a relationship with my parents, it doesn't matter to me. I'm over here like, you can live without a mom, it's fine. But yeah, so it got rough. The book got rough, but again, if you happen to come across it, dying to read about this relationship between this dying old man and this young journalist girl, read it for that, and really only that. But only read it if that's actually something you really want to read. Otherwise, I don't think you're missing too much by skipping this. I think you can find a story that has a nice relationship between, like, those characters, those kind of character dynamics, that is better written and that has a better worked plot. But that's it for... Oh no. Why is everything freaking out?
I know, my phone's also freaking out.
No. I think it's the internet. I think it's the internet.
I think so too.
Why are we doing this?
I'm working again. You're working again.
What?
Your stream's working again.
What was that? Oh. We are struggling today. I didn't say this, but... Oh, we're trying to figure everything out right now. Internet's freaking out. So, yeah, I didn't mention it earlier. I didn't end up mentioning it earlier, but, literally right when I started my stream, and right when I clicked to log on to my YouTube to start my stream, it just died. The internet just freaked out on me, and it just freaked out in the middle of all this. That's why there was some lag, but that's okay, because we're basically done anyway. But I do have a couple announcements, so don't leave me yet. Announcement number 1, this is the last book stream of the season, but like I promised you guys, I am going to be streaming probably throughout my hiatus. We're doing it a little differently. I think I'm going to make a change, and I think this is going to be a good change for the channel and for all of us. I think, I am not going to be streaming just strict schedule bi-weekly. I'm just going to stream on the Wednesday, whatever Wednesday after I finish the book. I think that would give me the ability, because again, I've complained about not being able to read for a while. I think this would then give me the ability to be able to read, and read longer books. And that would be something I'd really appreciate. So we're going to not stream strict bi-weekly on Wednesday. But it's always going to be the Wednesday after I finish the book. Keep up with my Instagram, Firestorm2343, and over there you'll know which Wednesdays, which weeks I'm going to be streaming. We're also going to be moving the streams to the vlog channel, because the vlog channel is a lot more spontaneous, and with the reading being a lot more spontaneous, as well as just kind of outside of the feel of the actual No Ordinary Scholar channel. I think it would be better if we moved these streams over to the No Ordinary Vlog channel. If you're not subscribed to that channel, go ahead, write a No Ordinary Vlog. It should be actually on my actual channel if you wanted to see that. We would appreciate if you wanted to go follow over there, and we can keep doing these kinds of streams throughout. So far, those are the only changes to the whole situation, the channels that I am going to be announcing so far. I'm really excited for them. I think they're going to be great. I will, again, probably today or tomorrow, post on Instagram the book that I'm going to be reading next. And yeah, we're going to go on hiatus for August for my birthday. So that's going to be fun. But until next time, Valedictions, friends.